I want to ask a question, and it's a fairly simple question. Do you think that technology assists in your trading performance? And the reason I ask that is, over the decades, we've seen enormous changes in technology. And this technology has infiltrated everything we do. To give you a sort of précis of my experience with the technology of trading, when I first started trading, we used to receive our orders from overseas, courtesy of a telex. For anyone under 40 who does not know what a telex is, it's a typewriter that weighs about as much as a shipping container. And it would print at the staggering speed of one page every 5 minutes or so. In comparison to the fax machine that came later, it was rubbish. And in comparison to what we use now for trading, it is positively prehistoric. I'm capable of trading any market in the world at any time, from any location, courtesy of my phone. If I were younger and my eyesight were better, I could do it via a smartwatch. But the question is, does this help or hinder the trader? Does all this information we are receiving in any way, shape or form assist us when we are confronted by this? Because we have to, in some way, shape or form, coalesce and divine this information into a trading decision, into something that is actionable for us. Many people have all sorts of views as to what trading is, what sort of profession it is, what you do. Most get it wrong. And they get it wrong for the simple fact that trading is an information management profession. Our job is to take all the inputs we receive, such as these, and make some sort of concrete trading decision upon them. In some way, shape or form, we need to take this information and make a decision. So we're forced to be managers of information. And the question is, does all this information we receive add to our decision making? Does it make our life easier or harder? And the trick in part of this is that technology guides the decision making. A classic example is the fact that when I first began trading, you could not day trade. The market simply did not exist to allow it. ASX stocks were not liquid enough to allow that, and derivatives were only just occurring. But modern markets now guide people towards short-term trading. Retail FX does this. Retail FX, in concert with computer technology and smartphones, pushes people towards a form of decision-making and a form of trading that might not be optimal for them. So the technology is forcing you in a certain direction. So not only do you have to manage the information, you have to manage the subtle bias that the information gives to you. If you're constantly being given feedback by your phone, if your phone allows you to sit there and effectively play the slots with Bitcoin around the clock, then the technology is forcing your behavior in a certain direction. You're not doing that. You're being guided in a certain direction. Make no mistake though, I actually believe that technology can make a dramatic difference to human performance. And it does. The most dramatic example of this is found in sport. This graphic here is from a talk by David Epstein. It's on the TED website and I've put the link up top. Epstein sets out to try and answer the question whether athletes are getting better. This graphic here compares Jesse Owens from 1936 with Usain Bolt in 2013. Bolt subsequently ran faster than this. And you would think, simply looking at the differential in their times, that athletes are getting better. After all, there is a hypothetical difference of 14 feet between them over 100 metres. That's a substantial difference. But Epstein asked a very interesting question. He said, is this differential real, or is it an artefact of the technology? And the interesting thing is it appears to be an artefact of the technology. Once both runners were modelled and modelled comprehensively, something intriguing was found. Bolt was 1/10 of a second quicker than Jesse Owens, and his advantage was probably due to the fact that he was 6'6" and had a much longer stride length. The difference in running shoes, blocks, tracks accounts for the majority of the difference between them. So the technology has made a difference. The technology has made runners faster, and this seems to be true in a lot of sports. But that raises the question of, has technology made that much difference to traders? If technology was making trader performance better, then surely we would see that in the returns that are generated. And surely we would see that in the returns generated by those who had the most access to technology, the most capacity to utilize and implement it. And that would be fund managers. But that doesn't appear to be the case. Because if we look at the percentage of large cap funds that underperform the S&P 500, and I will make a point, this data is universal, so that you can say the same thing about fund managers here in Australia, fund managers in Europe, fund managers in Asia. Over the long term, they generally all underperform their benchmark. But if the technology was making a difference, surely this number would whittle down as they squeezed more and more performance out of what they were doing. Surely then, fund managers would demonstrate performance like 100-metre sprinters. As time went on, the technology will enable them to get better and better. But that's not what we've seen. And the intriguing thing is, if you asked me whether I would want a modern fund manager to manage my money, or Jesse Livermore from 100 years ago, I would pick Livermore. Simply because he seemed to understand intuitively that the performance gains for traders came from not the external environment, but from within. And in doing so, he left us with a legacy of some wonderful observations of his own behaviour, why he thought in part he was successful, but more importantly, why he thought he was unsuccessful. And this is the problem with technology at present. There is too much gimmickry and not enough concentration on fundamentals. And by fundamentals, I do not mean sitting there browsing through the annual report of companies. I mean in terms of your own behaviour, what you look to do, what you seek to achieve out of trading, why you behave the way you do. To give you an example of why I don't think, in terms of technology, that it is important for trading, these are the performance figures of Winton Capital. Winton Capital is an English hedge fund run by David Harding. David Harding is a PhD physicist by training. You would think that someone like that would have immensely complex computer systems, that he would apply all the power of being a quant to the market, and that his trading would be guided by immensely complex computerized models. He freely admits that for most of the life of his fund, the trading signals were generated by nothing more complex than Excel. He certainly didn't reach for the latest version of Metastock and scout through its, 117 native indicators and thousands of other add-ons, because there was no need for that, because his very simple models guided his behaviour. Granted, in things like sport, in things like swimming, changes in technology do alter performance. But we come back to this problem of what do we do with this when we receive it? And I'm the first to admit that trading has certainly made my life easier in certain aspects. I can trade from anywhere at any time, over any instrument. And that is perhaps the problem. Because when we come back to looking at trading, when we come back to looking at why people fail, they fail not because their PC is not quick enough, not because they don't have a 40-inch 4K screen, not because their internet connection is not quick enough, not because they have the right platform. They fail for the simple, long-standing reason that they can't get their head together. This is the essential feature of trading. If you cannot get your head together, if you cannot understand that trading occurs between your ears and not inside the box that sits on your desk, then you are forever, ever destined to be one of these small-minded, cardigan-wearing little idiots who will sit there and on an internet forum will argue till they are blue in the face that your RSI should be set to 13 and not 12.